In a lush and vibrant African village, life was guided by the wisdom of the elders and the voices of the ancestors. Every path, every union, and every decision was believed to be written in the stars long before birth. The people of the village honored these traditions, trusting that the spirits of their forefathers knew best. But not everyone was willing to follow this path without question. Ayana was unlike most young women in the village. She was strong-willed, independent, and driven by a belief that she should have the right to choose her own destiny. While others listened to the whispers of tradition, Ayana listened to the fire in her heart. She had dreams beyond the village, ambitions that did not align with the expectations placed upon her. Though she respected her elders, she could not accept the idea of being told whom to marry. She longed for love, but it had to be on her own terms, not dictated by customs she did not fully agree with. One day, the village elders gathered to announce the decision that had been made for her. After consulting the ancestral spirits, they had chosen a man, Kofi. He was a humble farmer, known for his kindness and deep respect for tradition. He was not a man of wealth or high status, but he carried a heart of gold and a soul deeply connected to the land and its people. The elders spoke highly of him, insisting that the ancestors had deemed him the perfect match for Ayana. But Ayana was furious. She did not understand why she had no say in this life-changing decision. To her, Kofi was too simple, too ordinary. He did not match the vision she had of a grand love story. She wanted adventure, excitement, something beyond the quiet life he could offer. Despite the elders' warnings, she rejected the match, standing firm in her defiance. Little did she know, fate had a way of weaving its own story. The ancestors' choice was not made in error, and the journey ahead would prove that destiny could not be so easily ignored. The day had come for the village elders to reveal Ayana's destined match. The entire community gathered in the village square, eager to witness the sacred tradition. As the head elder stepped forward, the air was thick with anticipation. With a solemn voice, he declared that the ancestors had spoken. Ayana was to marry Kofi. The village erupted in murmurs, some nodding in agreement, others glancing at Ayana to see her reaction. Ayana's heart pounded in her chest. She could not believe what she had just heard. Kofi? The humble, quiet farmer? She had always considered him kind, but never once had she thought of him as a potential husband. Her entire life she had dreamed of choosing her own path, of finding love that was built on passion and connection, not on old traditions. No, she said, her voice firm but respectful. I will not marry Kofi. Gasps filled the air. The elders looked at her in shock, their wise old eyes filled with disappointment. Child, one elder said, shaking his head, this is not just a marriage. It is fate. The ancestors have seen the future, and they have chosen Kofi for you. But Ayana was unmoved. I respect the ancestors, but I do not believe they should choose who I love. Days passed, and Ayana remained steadfast in her decision. She had already given her heart to another, Juma, a brave and charismatic warrior. He was everything she had ever wanted, strong, confident, and full of life. Juma could take her on adventures beyond the village, far from the quiet, predictable life she feared with Kofi. Juma knew of the elders' decree, but he did not believe in such traditions. He wooed Ayana with his charm, whispering promises of a future filled with passion and excitement. She was captivated by him, convinced that she had found true love. The elders, however, were not pleased. They warned Ayana that going against fate would bring consequences. The ancestors do not make mistakes, they cautioned. If you reject their will, you may not like what the future holds. But Ayana was blinded by love and rebellion. She ignored their words, choosing Juma over Kofi. With her decision made, she believed she had taken control of her own fate. But fate is not so easily rewritten, and the ancestors had a lesson waiting for her, one she would never forget. Ayana and Juma's wedding was a grand celebration, filled with music, dance, and feasting. The village, though wary of Ayana's defiance, could not ignore the joy on her face as she stood beside the man she had chosen. Juma looked every bit the proud warrior, confident and strong as he claimed Ayana as his wife. That night, under the glow of the full moon, she whispered to herself that she had made the right choice. For a short while life seemed perfect. Juma was everything she had dreamed of, adventurous, fearless, and passionate. They built a home together, and Ayana felt certain that she had carved out her own destiny, free from the dictates of tradition. But as the months passed, shadows began to creep into their happiness. It started with the land. The once fertile fields that surrounded their home began to wither. No matter how hard they worked, the crops refused to grow. The rains, once abundant, now came too little or too late. The village elders whispered among themselves, casting knowing glances at Ayana. Some villagers believed that the ancestors had withdrawn their blessings. Then sickness came. A strange illness spread through the village, affecting both the old and the young. Healers did their best, but no remedy seemed to work. Ayana watched in horror as neighbors fell ill, their strength fading with each passing day. Even Juma, once so strong and full of life, began to suffer from relentless fevers and weakness. The murmurs of the villagers grew louder. "She has angered the ancestors," they whispered. "She ignored their will, and now we all suffer for it." At first, Ayana refused to believe it. "These are just coincidences," she told herself. "Famine and sickness come and go. It has nothing to do with the ancestors." But doubt began to creep into her heart. Every attempt to fix their situation failed. No matter how much she prayed, the suffering did not end. When she sought guidance from the elders, they only shook their heads. "The ancestors do not punish without reason," one said. "You defied them, Ayana. Now you must face the consequences." She looked at Juma, once a mighty warrior, now weakened and struggling. The life she had chosen was crumbling before her eyes. For the first time she wondered, had she truly been right to reject her fate? The realization sank in like a stone in her chest. If this suffering was a result of her defiance, was there still a way to make things right? Ayana had spent many nights restless, turning over the elders' words in her mind. The village continued to suffer, and Juma's health had only worsened. Despite her efforts to dismiss the warnings as superstition, she could no longer ignore the growing unease in her heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village sat in uneasy silence, an elder shaman, known as Nia, came to Ayana's home. Nia was a woman of great wisdom, one who spoke rarely but was deeply respected. Her presence alone sent a chill through Ayana's spine. "You seek answers, child," Nia said, her aged eyes piercing through Ayana's doubt. "It is time you hear the truth." Ayana sat before her, listening intently as Nia spoke. "Kofi is no ordinary man," the shaman revealed. "He carries the spirit of an ancient protector of our village, one chosen by the ancestors to guard our people for generations. The blood of the great guardian flows within him. That is why he was chosen for you. Together, you were meant to strengthen the village and ensure its prosperity." Ayana's breath caught in her throat. "But she hesitated, guilt creeping in. "I didn't love him." Nia nodded slowly. "Love is important, but destiny is greater. The ancestors do not choose lightly." 1,000 thoughts raced through Ayana's mind. Could this truly be why everything had fallen apart? Had she unknowingly disrupted the balance of the village by choosing Juma? She wanted to protest, but memories of Kofi resurfaced. He had always been kind, always steady. While Juma was bold and passionate, Kofi had been patient and wise. She recalled moments she had overlooked before. Kofi's ability to calm disputes, his way of understanding people's unspoken fears. He had always been a man of peace, while Juma had thrived in the thrill of battle. "The signs were always there," Nia continued, "but you did not see them. Now the ancestors send warnings and they grow louder with each passing day." Ayana's mind reeled as she left Nia's hut that night. Every step she took back to her home felt heavier. As she passed the village, she saw things she had ignored before, how the people still turned to Kofi in times of trouble, how they sought his guidance despite his quiet nature. And then she saw him. Kofi stood beneath the great baobab tree, speaking softly to a grieving mother who had just lost her child to the sickness. His face was filled with sorrow but also with strength. He radiated a quiet power, one that the village needed. One that she had denied. Ayana's heart clenched as she realized the truth. The ancestors had never been wrong. She had simply refused to see. Ayana sat by the river, her thoughts tangled like the reeds swaying beneath the water's surface. The shaman's words haunted her. Kofi was meant to be her true partner, chosen by the ancestors to protect the village. Yet her heart still ached for Juma. She had loved him fiercely, defied tradition for him, and now she was being asked to let go. She clenched her fists, frustration boiling inside her. Could she betray the man she had chosen? Could she ignore the suffering of her people? As she pondered, a sudden commotion in the village tore her from her thoughts. She rushed back to find a group of villagers gathered around her home, their faces filled with worry. "It's Juma," an elderly woman whispered. "He grows weaker." Ayana's breath caught in her throat as she pushed through the crowd and entered the hut. Juma lay on the mat, his once strong body now frail and drenched in sweat. His breathing was shallow and his eyes, which once burned with passion, now flickered with exhaustion. She knelt beside him, taking his trembling hand in hers. "Juma," she whispered, fighting back tears. He opened his eyes, forcing a weak smile. "My warrior," he said, his voice barely audible. The shaman, Nia, entered the hut and placed a gentle hand on Ayana's shoulder. "His strength fades, child. The ancestors must be restored." Ayana shook her head. "There must be another way. I cannot abandon him." Nia sighed deeply. "Only an act of destiny can restore balance. You have seen the signs. The ancestors' anger is not only upon Juma but upon the entire village. The crops fail, sickness spreads, and the people suffer. The choice lies with you, Ayana. Fate does not wait." Tears welled in Ayana's eyes. She had spent her life believing she controlled her own destiny, that love was hers to choose. But now love and fate stood at war within her. Kofi stood outside, watching from a distance. His face held no resentment, only understanding. He had never forced his presence upon her, had never claimed what the ancestors had promised him. And yet he remained, patient, steadfast, waiting for her to see what had always been there. Ayana squeezed Juma's hand, memories of their time together flooding her mind. But deep in her heart she knew, the ancestors had already chosen. The question was, did she have the strength to accept it? Ayana stood before the sacred ancestral shrine, her heart pounding like a drumbeat in a ceremonial dance. The village had gathered in silence, their eyes heavy with expectation. This was the moment she had spent days wrestling with, the moment she had to accept the path fate had laid before her. She knelt, pressing her forehead to the cool earth. "Great ancestors," she whispered, her voice shaking, "I have strayed from the path you set for me. I defied your will, thinking I knew better, but I see now that I was blind. I ask for your forgiveness, not just for myself but for my people who have suffered because of my choices." A hush fell over the village as the wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the sacred baobab tree. The shaman, Nia, stepped forward and placed a hand on Ayana's shoulder. "The ancestors are listening," she murmured. Tears streamed down Ayana's face as she took a deep breath, the weight of her decision pressing upon her chest. She turned to Juma, who had been carried to the shrine by his closest friends. He was too weak to stand, his once mighty frame reduced to frailty. Yet even in his suffering, he gazed at her with the love that had first captured her heart. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice thick with sorrow. "I fought for us, Juma. I fought because I believed love alone could defy fate. But love should never come at the cost of an entire village." Juma's eyes, though tired, held no resentment. He reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. "You were always meant for something greater," he whispered. "I was a fool to believe I could keep you from your destiny." Ayana bit her lip to hold back a sob. She cupped his face gently. "You will always be in my heart, Juma." The shaman stepped forward, lifting her hands to the sky. "The ancestors accept this offering of humility," she declared. "Balance shall be restored." A gust of warm wind swept through the village, and the people gasped as the dark clouds overhead began to part. The sun, hidden for weeks, bathed the land in golden light. Birds chirped in celebration, and in the distance, the first signs of new growth appeared on the fields that had withered under the ancestors' anger. Ayana turned to Kofi, who had stood silently throughout it all. He had not spoken, had not demanded anything of her, even now. He simply watched, waiting for her to decide what came next. She approached him, searching his face. "You have always known, haven't you?" she asked. Kofi gave a small smile. "I only knew what the ancestors had spoken. But I also knew that true love cannot be forced. I would have waited forever for you to see." Ayana exhaled deeply. "I was too proud to see what was in front of me." "You saw what your heart needed to see," he replied gently. "And now you are here." A murmur of approval spread through the village. The elders nodded, satisfied that fate had been honored. Ayana turned to face her people, standing tall despite the turmoil in her heart. "No more shall we defy the wisdom of those who came before us," she declared. "But let us also learn from this. The ancestors guide us, but they do not seek to chain us. Our choices matter. Let us move forward with both faith and understanding." The people cheered, relief washing over them. The sickness that had plagued the village began to fade in the days that followed. The crops sprouted anew and prosperity returned. As for Ayana and Kofi, their bond grew, built not just on destiny but on choice, on respect, trust, and a love that was patient, enduring, and blessed by the ancestors themselves. The sun rose over the village, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson. The once barren fields now overflowed with green, the rivers ran clear, and the laughter of children echoed through the air once more. It was as though the ancestors had breathed life back into the land, their anger replaced with blessings. The elders stood at the center of the village, watching with satisfaction as the people went about their day with newfound hope. The sickness that had plagued their community had faded, and families who once feared starvation now harvested abundant crops. It was a time of healing, a time of renewal. Ayana walked along the village paths, her heart light yet solemn. She had chosen her destiny, embraced the wisdom of the ancestors, and in doing so restored balance. The weight of that choice still lingered, but she no longer doubted it. Kofi walked beside her, his presence steady and comforting. They had grown into a partnership built not only on fate but on understanding. Kofi had not demanded love from her. He had earned it through his patience, kindness, and unwavering support. He had proven himself not just as the man chosen for her but as the man worthy of her heart. Yet, in the midst of the village's joy, one sorrow remained. Juma, the warrior she had once chosen over fate, had accepted the truth with a heavy heart. Though he had fought for their love, he had also seen the signs. He knew their path was never meant to last. One evening, as the village gathered around a great fire to celebrate the renewal of their land, Juma approached Ayana. His strength had returned, and though there was sadness in his eyes, there was also peace. "I will be leaving soon," he said softly. Ayana turned to him, feeling a deep ache in her chest. "Where will you go?" He glanced toward the horizon. "There is a kingdom in need of warriors. I have always been a fighter, and perhaps that is my fate, to protect, to serve." She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "You will do great things, Juma." He smiled, the pain of lost love softened by the warmth of friendship. "And you will be a great queen, Ayana. The ancestors chose well." As Juma departed, Ayana watched him disappear into the distance, knowing that his journey was far from over. Some souls were meant to walk different paths, and she had no doubt that fate had something great in store for him. With time, the village came to fully understand the ancestors' wisdom. Their guidance was never meant to be a chain but a light to lead the way. Ayana and Kofi ruled with wisdom, ensuring that future generations respected tradition while also valuing their own choices. The story of Ayana's journey became legend, a tale passed down through generations, reminding all who heard it that destiny, love, and wisdom were intertwined in ways no one could predict. And with the ancestors' blessing, the village flourished for years to come. As the seasons changed, so did Ayana's heart. What had once been a reluctant acceptance of fate slowly transformed into something deeper, something she had never expected: love. At first, Ayana had kept her emotions guarded. Though she had chosen to honor the ancestors' will, the scars of her past decisions lingered. She wondered if she had merely surrendered to destiny or if she could truly open her heart again. Yet, with each passing day, Kofi showed her that love was not about surrender. It was about growth, patience, and trust. Kofi never pressured her to love him. Instead, he walked beside her as an equal, supporting her, listening to her thoughts, and offering wisdom when she sought it. He understood that love could not be forced, even by fate, and so he simply let it bloom in its own time. It was in the small moments that Ayana felt her heart shift. The way Kofi helped the village children carve wooden animals with careful hands. The quiet strength in his voice as he spoke with the elders, always seeking balance and understanding. The nights when he would sit with Ayana under the stars, sharing stories of their ancestors, reminding her that she was never alone. One evening, as they stood by the great river, watching the reflection of the moon ripple across the water, Ayana turned to Kofi. "You have been patient with me," she said softly. Kofi smiled, his eyes warm and knowing. "Love is not a thing to be rushed, Ayana. It is like the river, it finds its course in time." She reached for his hand, feeling the calluses from years of hard work, the strength that had always been there, waiting for her to see it. I am beginning to understand what love truly is." Kofi simply held her hand, his grip steady, his heart open. And in that moment Ayana knew, this was the love she had been meant for all along. Not a love born of fleeting passion, but one rooted in respect, kindness, and true partnership. Word of their deepening bond spread through the village, and soon preparations for their union began. The elders, once burdened by Ayana's defiance, now rejoiced, for the ancestors' vision had been fulfilled. The people celebrated, not just for their love, but for the harmony it symbolized, a reminder that fate was never a cage but a guiding light. On the day of their wedding, the village gathered beneath the ancient baobab tree, a sacred place where countless unions had been blessed before. Dressed in the finest garments woven by the village women, Ayana stood before Kofi, her heart light, her spirit free. The shaman raised his hands in blessing. This is not just a joining of two souls, but a fulfillment of destiny. May your love be as strong as the earth beneath us and as boundless as the sky above. As Ayana and Kofi exchanged their vows, the wind carried their words into the heavens, a tribute to the ancestors who had always known what was meant to be. That night, the village erupted in joyous celebration. Drums echoed through the land, voices rose in song and laughter filled the air. The elders danced with the children, and families feasted beneath the moonlit sky. It was a night of unity, of renewal, of love finally realized. As the years passed, Ayana and Kofi led their people with wisdom and compassion. They ensured that tradition was honored, but never at the cost of choice. Young women were given the freedom to seek guidance from the ancestors but also to follow their hearts. The village prospered under their reign, the fields lush, the people content, the future bright. Their story became legend, passed down from generation to generation. Parents told their children of Ayana, the girl who had once defied fate but found her way back to it. They spoke of Kofi, the man whose patience and strength had won not just Ayana's love, but the love of the entire village. In the end, their tale was not just about destiny, it was about the power of love, the wisdom of the ancestors, and the truth that fate, when embraced with an open heart, always leads to where one is meant to be. As the years passed, Ayana and Kofi became the heart and soul of the village. Their journey, from defiance to acceptance, from doubt to unwavering love, had shaped not only their own lives but also the destiny of their people. No longer were they just individuals bound by fate, they had become symbols of wisdom, strength, and the eternal guidance of the ancestors. Under their leadership, the village flourished. Where once there had been discord, now there was unity. Where there had been struggle, now prosperity thrived. The people looked to Ayana and Kofi not just as rulers, but as guardians of tradition and justice. Their reign was marked by fairness and compassion, ensuring that the lessons of the past were never forgotten. Ayana, who had once rebelled against the will of the ancestors, now became one of the greatest protectors of their teachings. She understood now that their wisdom was not meant to control but to guide. She worked to ensure that every young girl and boy in the village was given the freedom to seek their own path while also respecting the wisdom of those who came before them. The village elders, once rigid in their traditions, learned from Ayana's journey. They saw that destiny was not always a straight path but one that could take many turns before reaching its true destination. Because of this, they began to offer guidance with open hearts, allowing the young to choose their future while still honoring the ways of the ancestors. Kofi, ever the quiet force of strength, stood by Ayana's side, leading with patience and humility. He had never once wavered in his belief in their destiny, and his unwavering faith had become a beacon for others. He spent his days mentoring the young men of the village, teaching them not only the ways of leadership but also the importance of kindness, respect, and devotion. Together, Ayana and Kofi became known as the beloved ones of the ancestors. Their love story was told around fires, passed down through generations. Parents told their children of the girl who had once rejected fate, only to find that fate had never truly abandoned her. They spoke of the man who had waited with an open heart, knowing that true love could not be forced but would always find its way home. The village flourished under their rule. The fields yielded bountiful harvests, the rivers ran clear, and peace reigned. But it was not just material prosperity that marked their time, it was the spirit of the people. There was laughter, there was joy, and most importantly, there was faith. Faith in the ancestors, faith in destiny, and faith in the power of love. As the years passed, Ayana and Kofi welcomed children of their own. Their sons and daughters grew up listening to the tale of their parents, learning from their wisdom and strength. And as those children grew, they too passed down the story, ensuring that the lessons of Ayana and Kofi would never be forgotten. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the village, Ayana and Kofi sat together outside their home. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sounds of children playing echoed in the distance. Ayana turned to Kofi, her once fiery spirit now softened with years of love and experience. "Do you think the ancestors knew all along that I would choose you in the end?" she asked with a smile. Kofi chuckled, his eyes warm with affection. "The ancestors have always known what our hearts struggle to see. They only waited for you to realize it on your own." She laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I suppose they were patient." "As was I," he said, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. And so their legacy continued. Long after Ayana and Kofi were gone, their names remained woven into the fabric of the village. The great baobab tree where they had exchanged their vows became a sacred place, a symbol of love and destiny fulfilled. The people continued to honor the ancestors, but now with a deeper understanding that destiny was not about control but about trust. The story of Ayana and Kofi became legend, passed from elder to child, whispered beneath the stars, carried on the wind. And with it, a powerful message remained. Fate may guide, love may shape, but it is faith, in ourselves, in each other, and in the wisdom of those who came before, that truly lights the path forward.